to the first episode of, well, will hopefully be a couple episodes of the Reattach Podcast.
Welcome.
Welcome. This is Matthew Clark, and I'm with
Zoe Adessa.
Okay. So, the Reattach Podcast is a podcast that I came up with the idea for because, like, initially, I started it because of my experience with the pandemic, the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get more into that later, but the point of the podcast is to talk to people, like
Staying connected,
guys, like
Yep.
getting back in touch. Because I feel, especially after the pandemic, a lot of people were isolated for a long time, and
Exactly.
even like I feel the pandemic was more like a culmination of what was already happening or leading up to that. Because before the pandemic, it was definitely present, but it wasn't like big, it wasn't major. But the pandemic really like ushered in a whole era of like isolation, just being in your room doing nothing all day.
Exactly. It changed everything.
Changed everything.
It did.
So what we're gonna do today, we have like 2 segments planned.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have a segment where me and Zoe are talking about our experience with the pandemic.
Yep.
What that was like. Then we have another segment where Dr. Rhule is gonna go over like topics like depression, isolation, what it means, trauma, what it means to be isolated, stuff like that, and really explain what our experiences through the pandemic might have been caused by chemically within our own bodies, like stuff we don't know the answer to. He's going to give us feedback on that and really help us in the second part of our program. The first part, we're just going to be talking. And at the end, more towards the end, we're going to talk about how you could be present, how you could reconnect, because that's another part of our podcast. That's the slogan, really, be present.
Yeah, be present.
Be present. We want to help people like do daily stuff to get back in touch
With themselves.
in
Getting
reality. Like not just being a robot walking around every day.
Exactly.
Not being a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
So to go.
Sorry, go ahead.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm going to start with my story. So the pandemic, it was about 2 to 3 years ago, right?
Yeah,
so I was in the 8th grade, and it was near my birthday. And I'm hearing all of these things about this new disease called COVID or new sickness. So with that, the schools sent us home for, they said, about a week. Everyone was excited at first because we got so much time off of school and things like that. But then I noticed it's actually like a real serious issue, a real serious thing, because they kept coming back to us saying, you're off for another week. And those weeks turned into months. And that really affected my education because I would wake up in the morning. First of all, I'll wake up at like 11 o'clock or 12. And I'll go on my laptop and try to do my work, but it was really hard for me to get up and be motivated to do that work. It was really confusing for the rest of the year because I was in a setting to not really learn. I was in my bedroom all day. I wasn't really motivated to do that work. So that was something that really affected me during that time. And yeah, it was kind of a dark time, but I'll also say it was a time for growth. What about you, Matthew? How are you during that time?
Yeah, I was in a worse space, Like for me during COVID, when it just started, I had a similar experience where they told us it was like 1 week of school.
Right.
And then I was like happy.
Exactly. We happy. Like
I was jumping. I was like, I was happy. I was never that happy in my life before. I was
Wow.
like, no school, bet, I could do anything I want forever. And then like, so a week in, I was just on my computer in my room, and I was like, yeah, this is fun. This is good. I don't want to go outside. I have nothing to do outside. I'll just be on my computer screen every day. And then 2 weeks in, I'm still happy because this was right before our exam, like our final
Okay.
exam. And so this means I didn't have to study, right? And it kept getting pushed back. So I was in the back of my head, I was like, the last thing I have to do is study. I could
Yeah.
just do whatever I want right now. And for a while it was like that until 2 months passed. We still were in quarantine. We weren't even like doing online school at this point, but like barely. And I realized that I was really becoming disgusting, like
Mm.
every day I would just wake up, sit down in front of my computer screen for 16 hours, probably like wake up 12 o'clock, go back to bed 4 a.m. in the morning, and then I would just get back up. I wasn't like showering, brushing my teeth. My windows were closed, so my room was completely dark every single day, and I wasn't leaving my room to go get food
Wow.
or anything. So I was just in a dark room in front of a computer screen every single day. And that's like another reason why I wanted to start this podcast, because I feel like the experience was the same for a lot of people.
Exactly.
Like I know mine might have been more on the extreme end, but still it might have been the same for more people.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And especially among the youth, because it's a really important thing to be, connected with the things around you. So that quarantine really changed a lot for a lot of people. It made them feel isolated, So the point of this podcast is to, what is it, like reattach, right?
Podcast. But I'll go back to what I was saying earlier, where I feel like the pandemic was like a culmination, because before we were moving into like an age of like technology where kids don't really go outside and play with each other no more.
Exactly.
Like
I agree. I definitely agree.
nobody goes outside anymore. So, and this was like right before COVID, we were leading up to this, and we were just always on our phones anyways, always on the computer doing this and that. I feel like before COVID, it was like, you become a completely different person. Like you have yourself before COVID and you're yourself after COVID. Yeah. Because thinking back on myself before COVID, I was definitely less like nowadays I feel like a robot, I feel like a zombie. I'll wake up and I do the same thing every day, and it's like I hear like a voice in my head. I don't know if I'm going crazy or something, but I hear a voice in my head. It's like a reoccurring, like unending, like like static on a TV.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's like in my head 24/7, and it's like the only peace I get is when I'm about to go to sleep or when I just wake up in the morning. Those are like my most peaceful times. I used to be like on TikTok scrolling.
Me too. I was
Right,
definitely on TikTok.
right before I go to bed. And I was like, nah, I need to take this time to myself to like wind down, like I feel like ever since I started doing that, I realized I feel less like a zombie. I feel less like a robot. But so I feel like that's one of the things that definitely helps. But going back to COVID and my experience with that, like every day I was just watching videos online and stuff. I was filling myself up with so much media and information. Like I don't think it's healthy to be doing that much.
Yeah.
I don't think it's healthy to be sitting in front of a computer that long.
It's definitely not healthy, but during that time, that's basically all we really did.
Yeah,
That's all we really did. I was on Netflix. I was watching Vampire Diaries, not gonna lie. I was binge watching it.
Yeah, I was binge
Yeah.
watching anime series and stuff. Like, to me, I never realized that it was really harming myself because it just felt fun in the moment, you know?
Mhm.
But, right, it's like during COVID, I could feel, I felt normal, like nothing seemed different. But when we just left like the COVID period and went into like going back to normal, that's when I realized, like, yo, there's a shift, there's a change.
It was.
Yeah, because I'm not myself. I'm not the person who I was when COVID just started. You know, things I used to find fun, I don't find them fun anymore.
So is that good or bad?
It's bad. Like, I definitely, all right, there's a good and a bad to it because I feel like I've become more mature. But the bad to it, I feel, is like things I used to find fun in, I don't anymore because I was so oversaturated during.
Okay.
Yeah, so I used to be watching anime all day, every day, but now I can't anymore
Mhm.
because I've just become oversaturated. You know, I can't watch my shows or I don't listen to music the same. I don't watch YouTube the same. I used to be on YouTube every day,
Mhm.
but even that, it's like,
Yeah.
it's not the same.
Yeah.
Is it
I
like
can
that?
agree.
Yeah,
What
agree
was
with
that?
that?
Yeah, I do agree. Honestly, I feel like the things that I found fun and that I don't anymore, I kind of think it's a good thing because it opened a lot of opportunities for me, new hobbies. And what you said about taking that time out for yourself, that wellness aspect, I started writing in my journal more, meditating and things like that, watching self care videos and things like that. So it brought a lot of positivity to me. Although there was negative aspects, I feel like it grown me to the person that I am now because I feel like everybody can say COVID changed them in a way, whether it's good or not. So
Yeah, I feel like the change that COVID brought to people is because when COVID started, I was in grade 10, I think. Yeah, I was in grade 10.
Mhm.
And I was like, how old was I? It started in 2019, right?
2020 is
2020.
yeah.
So I had to have been 16 years old. That's a whole 3 years. I'm turning 20 this year.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
you are.
that's a crazy transition for me, you know?
Mhm.
I don't feel any different. Honestly, it feels weird that I don't feel any different. I feel like there should be a difference, you know?
Yeah.
But I still feel every day like I could fall back into that slum, you know?
Mhm.
If COVID was supposed to happen again, God forbid, I feel like I would be doing the same thing, you know, waking up every day in front of a computer screen, doing the same thing and like in a dark room.
Mhm.
I don't know if we've gone on for like 30 minutes yet, but Dr. Rhule, do you want to take this time to talk?
Sure, so I'll jump in a little bit. And first, I'd like to say, though, that Matthew and Zoe, the fact that you've decided to do this podcast, I think is just fantastic. And why do I think that? Because when you share information with people, right? So the youth and persons of your age, when you share information, you share your experience, you make folks realize, number one, they're not alone. And some of the experiences that they're going through, both good and bad, that it's not unusual that they're not alone. And you offered, I kind of hear you offering some ways in which you got through the pandemic, right? So from 2020 onward, right? So I heard Zoe and you talking about, self-care and wellness, and growth and doing some of the things that make you the persons that you are today. But most of all, I just think it's great that you're doing this podcast. As I'm hearing you guys talking, I'm learning a whole lot too about myself and how to reflect on the experiences that all of us have had through the pandemic, really and I'll say 2020 up to this time. But you've touched on some really, really key points that I'll just take 1 minute probably to talk about, then turn it back over to you, because I was really interested in hearing about, like, Matthew, how did you get from, you said, like, when the pandemic started, right? You were somewhat isolated. You were just watching your computer screen. I'm curious about what was it? What was a turning point for you to recognize that was a concern of yours, and how you got from that space to the place you are today to be willing to offer information to the folks who are listening in the podcast? And then Zoe talked about self-care. Really, what does that mean, right? So when we talk about connection and reconnection, that's a phrase that we use, right? So I'm kind of curious too to hear from Zoe. How did you come to that realization, or what was a turning point where you said, okay, I'm in this space. There's this change that has happened, this COVID that has happened, and I'm going through this experience, and maybe there's something I can do to cope, to change, to self-direct, and move from this space of, you didn't say depression, but the change and the isolation that you feel. And I'm just going to give you one definition. You also mentioned trauma. Really, trauma really just means a change, right? So trauma is a change, and it could be really any change that we experience in life. So a change, it could be the loss of a loved one. It could be a change in the way of life. It's really we say adverse, any bad experience that we've had that brings about a change in our life. And the gamut could be really broad. But really, when you think about trauma, it really is a change from your usual activities. Loss of a parent, loss of a friend, loss of a way of life, loss of your schooling, when you're going to school. That's what trauma is, right? And of course, there are other traumas too, right? So physical abuse, intimate partner abuse, relationship abuse, that entire range is also traumatic, but it's something that has changed the way that you want to get to wellness, and these things that happens to you prevents it from happening. Then we'll come back to talking about what depression is, but I think you've both given us a very clear sense of what that could mean. Because when I think about depression, and of course it's a medical diagnosis, it's a healthcare diagnosis, but depression really comes and is manifested. The way that we know someone is depressed is that we look at the things that they normally do during their entire day. From the time that you get up, get out of bed, go into the shower, brush your teeth, have breakfast, sit with your family, sit with your friends, go to school, go to work. Depression really is all of that, how that changes, and your ability to then cope with everything that, just think about your everyday. Your ability to cope with all of those things has changed. You've lost interest in the things that brought you joy before, whether it was watching the Vampire Diaries on television or any other series that you kind of watched. If you were into sports or arts or entertainment, whatever that was that you did, if you were journaling, right, you've lost interest in that. It doesn't interest you anymore. So those activities, as well as just having some difficulty relating to your peers, your colleagues, your friends, your faith-based community, that's what depression does. It results in what I'll say is a functional impairment. So the things that you like to do you can't do. And it's just not like one day. It's not that when we talk about depression from a healthcare perspective, it's not that you're just sad that one day, right? Sad and blue that one day. It's that it persists and it affects the things that you're doing. So I'll just stop there for a second, because I kind of wanted to hear, because I think you've offered to your listening audience some of the things which I think are very, very useful, things that you've learned, both Zoe and Matthew, what you've learned in terms of self-care, investing in yourself, just some of the things that you did. What was a turning point that made you say, hey, the depression is happening, I can't go to school, things are changed, but I need to do something differently to get back to, I think Zoe said the word, you said wellness is a word I think you said, right? So I'd ask maybe both of you individually, just to kind of let me know and let the audience know, what was a turning point and how, and it sounds like it might have been a process, right? It didn't just happen one day where it just kind of, okay, you flipped the switch. One day you were feeling something and the next day you were not feeling it. So I think that your listening audience would be interested in hearing that. I'm interested in hearing that too. How did that kind of happen for each of you?
What was your turning point, Matt?
So my turning point, and it actually only just happened recently, which is crazy to me because COVID's been over for like a year now, I would say. But my turning point really just happened recently, and it was when I started doing more. I started picking up more hobbies. I started exercising.
That's great.
But what I will say, I still haven't regained interest in things that I usually find fun in, just like very vaguely, like I'll still watch an episode every now and then. I'll still listen to the music I like every now and then. But it's like it's back and forth. It's like a push and pull. Like I find fun in the new hobbies I've picked up, and but I still find myself, I don't know if it's, as I said earlier, I'm oversaturated, where throughout COVID I was doing that stuff too much, and now it's like I just can't find fun in it anymore. Or if it's like I just maybe moved on from that. But my turning point definitely was like this year, because I was definitely still in a dark space. Not this year, but like 2022, 2023. But I was definitely still in a dark space. I definitely didn't know where I was, what I wanted to do, and any of that. And actually, I migrated this year, like last year. So that was an experience for me too, because I just moved out of the pandemic into a space where I don't know anyone, and I'm in an apartment every day doing the same thing I was doing in the pandemic. But now I'm in a whole completely different surrounding, and it was like the pandemic times two for me, in a sense. It got worse. So I had to like get up and do something about it before it before I fell even deeper into a pit of like depression of just living the same life every day, like that's one thing that definitely was getting to me. Like my life felt like a broken record, and I feel like I was going crazy at some point, every day I was waiting for something new to happen. So I realized that I have to be the something new that happens that day, and realizing that is different from taking action, because you might say, oh, I'm the new that needs to happen in my day, but I don't know what to do. And it really just took me trying a couple of things, as I said, exercising, and like even going out more, even though I don't know where I am or anybody. I still try to go out and see the place and just do stuff. And I feel like that definitely helped. And I'm on a path right now where I can say I see a future for myself. And even though I have bad habits like my procrastination and stuff like that, I can definitely work towards something.
Yeah, that's great. And I think when you said that you're not interested in the things that you used to be, I feel like that's just you growing. You know, I feel like maybe you grew out of those things. What do you think?
I mean, it's possible that I grew out of them, but I don't know. That's the thing. I don't want to grow out of them.
You don't want to?
I
Okay.
don't want to. Like, I'm turning 20 in like 4 months, and that scares me. That's not. I'm anxious. You know, I want to keel over. I don't want to turn 20, and that thought is crazy to
Don't
me.
be anxious. It's okay.
It's
20
not
is still
okay.
young.
I won't be a teenager anymore, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe I don't see myself turning 20. Maybe life is moving too fast, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because time, I don't know if time felt like it stopped during COVID or what, but it's like time stopped and then all of a sudden it started again, and it's like
Exactly.
fast forwarded.
Yeah.
Because even my memories during COVID are like hazy, you know, like I don't know if that's like a trauma thing or if it's like I don't know that is, but it's like I know it happened. I know what I was doing while it happened, but I don't remember it. Like, there's a difference between knowing something happened and remembering something that happened, you know? I don't know if that's, like, true or not, but that's how I feel.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But my turning point during COVID was basically what Matthew said. I was getting up, doing the same thing every day, not really doing my schoolwork as I was supposed to, but what I did was
Doing schoolwork all the time. Like, doing schoolwork on Zoom, online school is hard.
Yeah, it wasn't even online school. Like, at that point, my school wasn't doing Zoom at all. They would just post work and we have to turn it in. But yeah, during that time for me, I just became creative and I found talents within myself. Okay, so I love lip gloss and stuff like that. So I went on Amazon, bought like this lip gloss making kit, and I made like a bunch of lip glosses just for fun. And I also started to learn how to do hair and things like that. So I feel like during the time I really opened myself up to like new hobbies and being creative. So yeah.
Do you want to go in, Dr. Rhule?
Yeah, that's great. So I have a couple of thoughts. So I'm going to use an example of people who have asthma, right? So when we have small children or even young adults who have asthma, one of the things that which means basically they have difficulty breathing, and typically sometimes what happens is they have some things that trigger it, right? So it could be exercise, it could be perfumes, it could be sometimes anxiety or stress that basically triggers an asthma attack. And typically what happens is then you have difficulty breathing. You have to stop doing what you're doing. And then what most people who have asthma do is we give them an inhaler, and then they take that inhaler that has some drugs in it, and it helps to loosen up your lungs so you can breathe better. So when I think about COVID, and I think about the trauma of COVID and the change that COVID brought, and your podcast, the reason I was really excited for you to invite me was I likened it to what we do with persons who have asthma. Because, and/or depression, and/or any other mental health condition, or really any health condition, right? Because what we do is we share information. We let them know that, number one, they're not alone. What they're experiencing physically and mentally is natural. But we also help them to recognize some of the things that triggers an attack, triggers the isolation, triggers the depression, and help them to do a couple of things. One, communicate, right? So communicate with their loved ones and their healthcare provider and their friends and people that they trust to communicate what's going on with them so they can actually make an action to make that asthma attack or the mental health condition or the isolation, that they can nip that in the bud sooner than later. So that's one, communication. Well, first, really recognition, right? Because you have to be able to understand what's happening to you, put it in context, but then communicating with someone, yourself, and somebody else to help you get over that period. So communication is one. Connection, because I think when you connect with other people, just like you're doing in this podcast, letting the youth and the teenagers and the folks who are moving from 19 to 20, let them know, like, look, this is a natural process that happens with every single person with growth and development. It's not unusual. You're not by yourself. Just to get that connection through the podcast, this one and the other ones that you'll do, and hopefully they'll come and they'll listen and they'll share their ideas and you'll give them more information, that's a natural part of just being alive and being connected. And that's a good thing. And the other thing that I like about the fact with both of you is the collaboration, right? You're hearing two different perspectives from Zoe and from Matthew and from myself, but going forward, the podcast is really about both of you. So I'd say communication, connection, collaboration are really great things that I've learned from you just listening in the last 20 minutes. So I'll say that piece. The other thing I'll say is, it always amazes me that I like walking. So I walk outside and I like the environment. Like if you can see in my picture in the back is, the waves coming in, the sandy beach, and a palm tree growing really nicely there, despite what's going on. And I'll say two things and I'll stop talking. When I walk and I look up into the sky and I see the sun and the moon and the stars, I'm always amazed at the creation, or really just looking around. I'm always amazed at the creation that is around us. But then I'm also interested in the fact that we as people, me, you, and other people, when we look out at that creation and we are so amazed at how wonderful and unique and special those things are, we don't think about ourselves in that way. But we are, because really, you're just as unique and special and amazing, just like the sun and the moon and the stars and the trees and the waves. You're just as special as that. And I guess my point is, what I'd like us to do is when you go outside and you're so amazed at the nature that you're seeing, to recognize that you also are amazing. You are a creation there's no other creation like you. Just like there's no other star, there are millions of stars out there, millions of suns and planets, but no two are alike. So when you go outside and you are amazed by what you see, think of yourself that way too. Think of yourself as being an amazing creation with lots of information to share, to connect, to communicate, to help somebody who, again, it's a journey, right? Maybe they just haven't gotten to that self realization or that turning point yet. But to really make it a point for them to realize when you go outside and you're looking at these wonderful things, you are an amazing creation too. And don't take that for granted. You're an amazing creation. My second point would be the reason why I like the picture of this land or island, and you see those waves coming in, and you don't know what the wave is going to be like. And that's life, right? So the wave may be calm, the wave may be high, the wave may be low. It could bring anything. It could bring anything. But despite the fact that that's all happening, you still have a palm rooted inland, rooted in the ground, who's still flourishing, still have leaves on there, and probably is producing coconut and is doing what it's doing for its life. And that is what life will bring to you. Will bring all those waves. And your podcast, the reason I jumped and said, I love the fact that you, Zoe, and Matthew, two young persons are doing this, is because to me, this is what life is, to share the information and to help your listeners and your readers realize all those waves that are coming in. That's going to be life. Every single wave will not be the same. If it's not COVID, something else is going to come and upstir your way of life. But what we have to communicate and help each other understand is to understand it, to name it, to communicate it, to connect with somebody who can help us, and don't do it by yourself. To really collaborate with someone else, and you can flourish just like that palm tree or the coconut tree that's there, rooted in ground, and you can withstand no matter what life brings forth. You will have experienced, you will have seen, you will have persons who have talked with you and shared their experience and make you realize, like, you know what? I'm amazing just like the stars out there. And yes, this is a rough spot, but I can do it. I can do it. I have the skills. Don't try to do it by yourself. Connect with people who have been there before, who maybe offer you advice. Doesn't mean you have to take it. It's just advice and opinions, and you kind of hear and you use your own good judgment, your own good thoughts, and you make a decision that's best for you.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to say. I thank you, Zoe and Matthew, for doing this. I think it's fantastic.
I love it.
And I don't know how many times I can say. I don't know how many times I can say that. I just think you guys are doing this. I just think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic. Honestly, I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah, because I definitely loved everything you just said. When you were like talking about the sun, the moon, and the stars, that felt kind of therapeutic, because I in my head I went outside and I was looking at the sun, the moon, and the stars, and then you started talking about comparing yourselves to those things, and I was actually starting to think in my head and compare myself to the sun, the moon, and the stars, and I never really think about how unique or how different I am from everyone else. I never really think about myself as an individual. I never think about how special I am, you know. And sometimes it really takes validation. It takes someone coming to me and saying thank you, even saying my name, and I feel like I've been acknowledged, you know. I don't know if that's just me, but one thing that I'd like to grow into more is not needing the validation of others, maybe being able to self-validate more, saying, like, being able to get that same feeling when I say my own name, you know,
Right.
like feeling pride in myself in a sense. But
Something that could help with that is just expressing gratitude
especially in
for
gratitude.
for the things around you, and for yourself, giving yourself good self-talk, talking to yourself positively. So that could help. Like just looking yourself in the mirror, saying good things about yourself. It might be hard at first, but you can definitely do it.
I don't know if I see myself looking in the mirror and talking to myself.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Zoe, I love the fact that you say that, because I would say over and over again, if you say negative things to yourself every day, right? If you say those things, eventually you believe it.
Exactly.
So what you have to practice is you have to practice telling yourself positive things and good things about yourself every single day. Every single day. But first of all, it's true anyway, right? It's true. those things you're saying about yourself is true. And the more you say it, the more that it really comes to manifestation, and the universe does that. If you tell yourself negative things every day or listen to negative talk every day, eventually you believe it. I'm not sure if you've ever seen this video. It's on YouTube of this young kid. He's a small boy, and he's walking down the street and he's repeating, like, it's a mantra. He's like saying every day, I'm smart, I'm handsome, I'm I'm worth it, etc. Every single day. That's what you should be doing. That positive talk to yourself, you should be doing. Don't do that negative talk. I mean, and I'm saying that to myself too, right? Because some days you beat yourself up, but get out of the habit of speaking to yourself negatively. So definitely, Zoe, that's something that we should all practice every day. Positive thoughts, positive talking to ourselves. And when people are saying negative things around you and about you, what you do is you block them out and you shut them out, because you really don't want to hear that stuff.
True. So I think this kind of goes into our be present section where
Exactly. Yeah, it does.
it talks about how we can take steps to reconnect with ourselves. And that's one of the biggest points. I think that should be like the top point, being positive every day, having some positive thing to say about yourself. I think is near the top point of being present. Another thing I want to say is like just some small stuff, like getting off your phone or getting off your computer, getting off and really enjoying your surroundings or your environment. I feel like that's another thing that it comes with being present, being connected. Do you have anything?
Yeah. So anybody listening to this, think to yourself, what are you doing to be present? What are you doing to stay connected? And what are you doing for yourself? It doesn't have to be this huge goal. It can be something little as is taking a walk or waking up early in the morning. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be something that really would change your life completely in a day. It could be a small thing that you start. You could grow it to something big, like you could start exercising. You're not going to see a change day one, but as you continue to exercise, you're going to see a change, and you could start journaling, you could start meditating. There's a lot of stuff you could do, and trying these things you might not like them, and some of them you may never like, but you will never know until you try.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not only that, although it's good to put like positivity to yourself, it feels amazing to give it to other people. Like, give somebody a compliment, help somebody move something, because you're going to feel amazing after, and, good karma. So, yeah.
Definitely being positive to others
feels good.
Feels good, because I feel other people can heal you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, because even my mom, like, I'll do something for my mom and she'll say thank you, and I genuinely feel something from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. So that's amazing.
You have anything, Dr. Rhule?
You said it all. I mean, I don't have anything else to add. I think it's fantastic. I like the fact you said really be positive to somebody else, because I think that goes a long way too. Right. So while you're being given positive talk to yourself, do that for somebody else as well. I think when you do service, volunteering, I think that's great.
Exactly.
The three things I would just go back to say: realizing that you're not alone. Well, four things really, right? So you're not alone. You're not by yourself. Communicate, do that connection, and definitely collaboration. But then the final thing I'd say is sometimes I think we get discouraged because we look at we look at the end result, and we say to ourselves, you know what, I can't do that. But really, if you start, right? So what is the phrase? The journey of 1,000 miles begin with the first step. It's something like that. And I forgot who said it. I forgot who said it. But really just taking that one tiny step, that first step, and don't look at the end result, that end journey, and become discouraged by it. Just take that first step.
Be present.
Be present and take that very first step. And take the second step and the third step. And then when you look back, you're like, wow, I've come through it. So definitely be present.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I agree.
So we're coming towards the end of our podcast today. I feel like we touched on a lot of stuff. I just have one last thing. Another thing with communicating, I feel like today a lot of people don't like talking to people. I feel like that's one big thing. People just don't like people anymore. And it's like there's valid reasons for it. There's a lot more toxicity between people these days. We do a lot of things behind each other's backs. There's a lot of just bad habits that everyone has, but I feel like we can't just accept that. We can't just say that's the way it is and that's the way it's gonna be. We could change it. And it's one thing I want to leave there at the end.
Okay. What I want to end off is just do something good for yourself. Do something good for somebody else. Be present. Love yourself. Do your best in anything that you do and take those baby steps. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing to be present, Dr. Rhule?
So I actually like writing.
That's great.
Journaling really, but it's actually writing, so not journaling. But I like writing. That's what I do to be present. And actually, once I'm done with this, that's when we'll be doing writing something.
Okay, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
You're writing.
I feel like a hypocrite because I'm not really doing anything to be present, so maybe I should. I know I said a lot of stuff like exercise and stuff, but I've been slacking these past couple of days, so
okay.
I need to get back.
It's never too late to get back.
It's never too late to get back. Yeah, so.
Yeah, don't think it's ever too late to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, too
early.
Yeah, you might not be consistent with whatever you're doing, but as long as you're doing it, it should be fine. You gotta pick it back up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, I am Zoe, and
this is Matthew,
and that is our
first episode of the Reattach Podcast.
Yes, it
and
is.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Rhule.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fantastic. I learned a lot.
Okay. All
right. Have a good day, everybody.
All right.
All right. Take care.